Hi, this is David from over at SimplyMaya. Now, as an interesting modelling exercise, I'm going to show you how to design your own face mask. Now, I'm stuck in a country where we're on full lockdown. We're also required by law to wear a face mask anytime we might leave the house to pick up groceries or visit the doctor or whatnot. Now, this is a measure taken by the government where I live to protect other people from you. Now, a friend of mine recently asked me to 3D print him a face mask. He brought my attention towards the growing number of these projects online. Now, one of the problems I have with these projects is they're often fairly uncomfortable to wear, so I told my friend that I'd make him a custom designed one that would more fit his head, and a few friends have subsequently asked me to do this, so I figured I'd bring you guys along on this journey. Now, you're going to have to listen to me waffle a bit here, because I'm going to let you know that I am not a designer of personal protective equipment. I haven't designed any respirators, I have no training for this, I'm a 3D artist. I am putting this out there purely as a modelling exercise for the members of my own community, SimplyMaya. So if you have Fusion or Solidworks and you know how to use those, that would also be a better choice. But at this point, when we're all stuck in the house with little to do, a lot of us, I'm going to go through this because it's an interesting exercise. So we're going to create a mask with good topology that fits your head, that you can 3D print, hopefully will be more comfortable if you need it than something you would just grab off the internet. And hey, most people here are just wrapping a scarf around their head or a bandana or something. So while this won't fully protect you, I'm going to say it's probably better than wrapping an old t-shirt around your head. So with those caveats out the way, let's take a look at it. Now, I've got a basic shape of something here that actually fits my head. And I'm going to walk you through the process of not just creating the basic shape, but the whole thing, room for a filter and all that kind of jazz. Now, I'm going to start off with this sort of generic head model here. Now, again, I'm going to waffle a bit. A better way to do this would be to have a 3D scan of your own head or use a photogrammetric scan. So take multiple pictures around your own head and build yourself one using some photogrammetry techniques. Now, as I'm going to be creating these for a few friends now, I don't have that luxury. Most people, believe it or not, can't take a 3D scan of their own head. I know, you should be able to, but there it is. So I've decided to use a generic model and take some basic measurements. Now, the first measurement I've asked for is the circumference of the head. This will allow us to get a ballpark sizing. So in my case, that's 58 centimeters. I've also left the mask you can see here in place, because this was done from a 3D scan of my own head. So I'm going to see if our sizing techniques actually get us in the ballpark. And that's the best you can expect, really. To be fair, though, you should have some sort of rubber gasket going around the inside of your mask, which will allow you to be a little bit out. Hopefully, this should just get it a bit more perfect for you than simply downloading something online. So I'm going to come in with the EP curve tool here, and I'm going to go around my head. Now, I don't need too many points here, neither do I need to be that accurate. As I say, we're going for a ballpark measurement, not really, a spot-on accurate one. I'm going to hit return to finish that. Then I'm going to go into the foreview and make sure that this is wrapped around the widest part of my head, and then I'm just going to edit the control vertex points to make sure this is kind of intersectional with the head here. So this one at the back needs to come out a lot. It's probably another control vertex point there. There we go. And just get this lined up to your satisfaction. I find as well that doing things like this while, not contributing a lot, does allow you to help, friends, at least with that illusion of some extra security, which is kind of nice. Like I say, our government has insisted on the printing of face masks, or not the printing of, but the wearing of face masks to keep other people safe. I think it's a good idea, certainly when I go out to do essential supplies for shopping and whatnot. it gives me the feeling that we are in a situation just to be having to wear a mask. So it reminds me to be mindful, not get too near to people and whatnot. So it's not overall, I think, a bad idea. So I'm going to hit spacebar to go into 4-view, Control 1 to isolate this, and I'm going to now measure the circumference of this. So I'm going to go up to Create, Measure Tool, Arc Length Tool, and then you click on the curve, and I'm going to get this round to the end, and this is currently 90 centimeters. So I'm going to scale this down till it would be approximately the width of my head, so 58. There we go, don't need to be too perfect. And then I'm going to scale this head uniformly until it fits once again in the circle. I'm going to make sure that that, of course, is at the widest part. So I'm going to take the curve here and move it down to the widest part of the head, which I think is around there. Okay, and that looks about fine to me. So again, this is going to get you in the ballpark. There's another couple of measurements we want to do. Let's just flip the grid off. Some essential measurements for me is I want this thing to be comfortable. So I need to measure from the bridge of my nose here to under my chin to make sure it fits in that regard. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to hide this guy. Then I'm going to go to Create, Measure Tools, Distance Tool. I'm going to select the bridge of my nose here and under my chin. So before we sort of edit anything, I'm going to move all the locators up here to the front of the model so I can actually see where it is. Now this guy currently stands from the bridge of his nose to 12.7 centimeters, and my nose to chin is around 11 centimeters. So me and this chap are not proportioned in the same way. Now I'm going to move the pivot point up here to one of these vertex. So I hit Insert on the keyboard and I'm going to align the pivot point up there. This way I should scale from the bottom. So now I can do that. Oops, I think my scale tool is set to component. There we go, should be anyway. And now I shouldn't get that warning message when I scale. All right, so let's move this up to 11. So somewhere around here. And then I can scale this from the top until the bottom of my chin meets that point, somewhere around here. Now the other measurement I decided to take was the width of my cheekbones from like here to here. So let's do that. So let's go in and use a measuring tool again. So Create, Measure Tool, Distance Tool, and I'm going to pop it here and here, let's say. Now my measurement for this is 11.5 approximately. So once again, let's grab everything and pull it out here. And I need to get my measurements to 12. Now I think I might have previously said 11, but actually it's 12. So I'm going to pull them out a bit more and then I'm going to place them on my cheekbones here. So sort of here and here. They might need to go back a bit. Let's have a look. And what's that standing at? 11.9, but this one is a bit in. So with me being at 12, I'm going to pull these out a bit and just make this centimeter or so wider. So let's scale him out, at least like so. There we go, something like this. Now, like I said, you're never going to get this perfect. We're also going to need to scale this to a factor of 10. Now, the reason for that is quite simple. I'm working in centimeters here, but when I export this, my slicer is going to see those centimeters as millimeters. So scaling by a factor of 10 will get it the right size when I print it. Now, obviously, I'm not going to print the head, but I still need something to build a mask around. So let's go here. Let's center the pivot for this. Now I've got a shelf for this center pivot freeze transformations. I'm putting out a free video on how to make a custom shelf. In fact, I'm going to try and put out a bunch of free content for you guys while this crisis is ongoing, because we're all kind of stuck in the house together. So if you don't have your center pivot and freeze transformations on the shelf, which you probably don't, you can just go up to modify and freeze transformations and center pivot is here. Okay, so let's make that 10 times bigger. Now I've frozen the transformations. The reason, if you didn't get that, why I froze the transformations, you can see here, making this 10 times bigger would be a pain in the backside. Much easier to do if it's all set to 1, then I can just hit 10. Okay, so now we have this mask that I made earlier. Now this is the beginnings of a mask. but I did make it from a scan of my own head. So I can tell now if we are going to be kind of on for this model, and yeah, we kind of are. So the scaling worked within reason. You know, you're never going to get a perfect scale. So for me, this head is probably a little bit too tall. But this shouldn't make much of a difference to you guys, because there should be a rubber gasket going around the inside of your mask to help seal it to your face. So you would naturally want to print this 10% bigger anyway, just to ensure that good fit around there, which is why I left some gaps on the original model also. All right, so I'm going to call that good. It's certainly a lot better than trying to, you know, download something off the internet and maybe scaling it for you, or for me it is anyway, and it's an interesting procedure. And really that's what I'm about at the moment, this sort of giving us all something to do and learning some Maya at the same time. So you can see on my base mask here, I've kept a fairly good clean topology, because again, this tutorial for me is more about, you know, good Maya modeling. So let's do some. Let's go into the front view here and hit 1. I'm going to unsmooth this guy. I'm going to make that bigger, and I'm going to make a mask based on this template. Now, all of these files will be available to you guys. I'm going to make a cylinder, and I'm going to just move that up until it's sort of in position. Then I'm going to scale it so it's a bit bigger. E to rotate, J to lock the rotation, flip it 90, and now I have something to work with. So I'm going to scale this cylinder until it's about the same size as my mask here to make my life easier. And I'm going to go to subdivision caps at 0, because that will take all of the geometry away from the front, and then I can just delete and delete. I don't need it. Okay, let's have a look how long it is, because I've got a feeling it's probably a bit too long right now. There we go. Let's just make that a bit smaller. Now, you can do this from scratch and come up with a different shape. The important thing is it fits the contours of your face. Anything other than that is irregardless. You could make a skull, you know, a very decorative thing, whatever you want. You know, but we are Maya users here, and we should have the skill to do this ourselves rather than relying on somebody else. And as I say, in the current particular crisis, it's actually quite nice to be able to do something, anything, you know. So I'm going to take this guy, I'm going to put it on its own layer, and I'm going to make it a reference. That just stops me selecting it, and okay, let's add selected objects to that, and now I shouldn't be able to select it. All right, so let's come in and edit some vertex here. So I'm literally just going to take these vertex one at a time and push and pull them about. Now, as I say, you get any shape you like, and as I think I was mentioning, I will also make these files available to you. Now, I apologize, you see a friend of mine has popped up there on Good Old Games. I am at home at the moment, of course, so this video isn't going to have the production value that I would normally like. So apologies for that, but I guess we're all kind of in the same boat at the moment. And I'm going to come down here. Now you'll notice I'm only shaping one side of this. It would be ridiculous to shape both sides. In fact, I'm just going to get rid of this side altogether. Why do something twice when we can just mirror this one across? Now let's have a look at the front of this thing. I'm going to select the vertex here, and I'm going to scale them in. So I'm just going to uniformly scale them in. Okay, and then I'm going to scale these ones down a bit, and I'm just going to move this down, and I'm going to get the sort of shape that I want for the front. Now I also want these to come in this way, of course. Okay, so we're just deciding what sort of shape we want at the front. Again, I'm actually going to get rid of my, actually we need to contour in at the sides a bit as well, but the first thing I'm going to do before I do that is select my model here and rotate it slightly. Now you could also select the vertex on the front and rotate those selectively, but this will give you a model that's currently wonky, so you don't really want that. You want to be able to get it back to flat, because in this case you should be 3D printing it, of course, or you know, if you so choose. which will leave you with a model that is a bit wonky and difficult to get flat on the front. This way I can just change the rotation back. Let's see, what rotation were we using there? So Y. Actually, I'm going to freeze the transforms on this. Would that be a good idea? Yeah, so I'm going to freeze its transforms. And now when we rotate it, I can just set it back to flat by doing this. And I'm going to need to set it back to flat when I 3D print it. So let's rotate it a little bit. Okay. And now I can come in and edit these vertex on the back so they match the side. Okay, now this is not a very good side view for me, so I'm going to go to panels. Where are we? Orthographic, new, and left, that should be. Let's hit F. Yep. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to turn on wireframe and shaded, and I am going to turn on X-ray, and then I'm just going to match these verts with these ones. Now you can use my base mask design. I'm not sure where I ever managed to say that with the constant waffling that I've been doing. But yeah, as far as I'm concerned, everything that I design or make with this project, including the video tutorial itself, is in the public domain. Do whatever you want with them. Share them, take the files, edit them. You know, I'm really very happy if people see this, and you know, I really hope that you'll just use it for a bit of cosplay one day. That would be a nice thing to think about. Right, I'm going to take this off reference and I'm going to hide this, and there you go. I have my basic shape. Now for me, I might contour this one in a bit more, but we're going to smooth this so it's kind of difficult to see in this view. And I'm going to leave a little gap as well. Now, one of the things I do want to do is use the multi-cut tool to come around here, like so, and maybe like so, because I don't want this thing to dip in at quite so an acute an angle. So I'm going to push this up, and I'm going to push this up, and I'm going to say that's easily going to allow for a broad range of noses here. Now, and let's see, so I'm going to rotate this maybe a bit more and push it back a bit more until it's just bisecting our face there, to make sure that we're getting a good fit. So up here looks like it might need to come out a bit. Okay, this is looking pretty good to me. Now before I mirror it, I would need to select all these vertex. So all these guys and all these guys, hit R to scale, go back to 1. Now why is that pivot point appearing up there? Let's reset the pivot point on that and reset the tool in general. Okay. That is not what I'm looking for. Right, let me sort this out. So it doesn't seem to be resetting my pivot. There we go. So that should do it. Slight muck up with the tool. I am having in Maya 2012, I'm having big problems with the tools doing all sorts of weird and wonderful things. Anyway, I'm going to hit X on the keyboard to snap this, so W and then X, and I'm going to snap this to the grid till it's perfectly in the center. Now I want this center line. Let's just try scaling these, make sure that they cannot be scaled anymore, which means they're perfectly flat. Now I want that center line, which has kind of messed me up a bit here, but not a worry. I'm just going to take, let's say, this edge and this edge, and I'm going to move them out slightly. There we go, and possibly that looks all right to me. Now again, your mileage may vary with this sort of thing. It depends on what sort of shape that you want to create. I think we might be a little big here. So I'm going to squash this backwards just a little bit. And there we go. Now take a bit more time with it than I am. And that, of course, has then pulled me off the center line. So let's just select these verts again, which I will do now by selecting the edges, hitting Control, right mouse button to vertex, and then R to scale them back together again. That does not look straight to me. Let's focus on that. It doesn't look straight, but it is straight. Okay, perfect. So, yeah, it's just a visual artifact of the face being here. That's quite funny. All right, now if we can mirror this thing, so mesh mirror. And the merge threshold, for some reason, Maya 2012 strikes again, is massive. There we go. That should do it. Okay, is that enough room to get a nose in there? Yeah, it is. So again, we're now on the realm of it fits the face. We're now in the realm of, you know, how funky do you want it to look? Now, one thing we need to do is cut a hole in the front, of course. Now we've got this base shape. Now that's the reason I have joined it back together. I am going to delete the history of this. So edit, delete by type history. And then I'm going to just fill the hole in the front. So one of the reasons I joined it back together, sorry, as I was saying, is it's easier for people who are new to 3D to visualize what we're about to do if we do it on the whole model. If you're already, you know, a 3D guy, then by all means, keep working on half the model. That is certainly the more efficient way of doing it. Now, I'm going to come in and fill this hole, but if I just take the edge here and do a mesh, I've seen a lot of people do this. It's a way to do it. I'm going to show you it because I think there's more efficient ways to do it. In this case, fill hole, and then we could retopologize across this whole thing. Because we're 3D printing, it's worth noting that topology isn't that important. You could just bullion through this with a cylinder and you'd be good to go. However, there's a fairly easy way to do this sort of thing, which is just take, this is a 20-sided cylinder. We know this because we made the 20-sided cylinder. So just take another 20-sided cylinder, bring it up here. I am going to scale this up a bit, just roughly, so it's easier to see. I'm going to hit J to lock the rotation and get it 90, and then I'm going to put this in the middle of my mask where I want it to go. Now for this, I will want to straighten up my mask. So channel box, rotate Z, sorry, that was translate, rotate X, there you go. Now it's straight again, which is why I didn't simply bend the vertex, because I wouldn't have had that functionality. Now let's go into the front view and see how big we want the hole in the front of this thing. So I'm going to put the scale of this back to 1, believe it or not, because I'm going to use the diameter or the radius here. So I want about a 50mm filter. That's pretty standard for sort of cotton pads and filters that I've seen online that are available here. Again, your mileage may vary. I'm going to go with 50mm. So we see we're at 50mm. Okay, and what we don't need is the back of any of this cylinder. So I'm going to select the faces, whoops, of the right object and hit delete. Now, normally I'd use shortcut keys to select faces and whatnot. Of course, much easier. F8, F9, F10, and F11, respectively, to go from face, vertex, edge, and whatnot. But right now they are mapped to my video recording software. So how do we get this to become a hole? Well, the answer to that is quite simple. So there's our 50mm. Let's get it in the center of where we want it to go. I'm going to select this object and this object, and I'm going to do a mesh combine. There we go. That combines us into one object. Now I can select all of these edges and all of these edges and literally just hit bridge. Now that's coming a bit twisted, so let's twist it so it isn't twisted. There we go. Something like that. And that keeps us with a nice quadrant topology. You know, these edges here are a bit how's your father, but honestly they're not too bad. And then all we need to do to make a hole is, of course, cut one. Okay, and we are done here, folks. So we can smooth that down and you'll see we get a perfectly circular hole. Now, eventually we're going to build a lip outside of here to attach the filter to, but that's your basic shape of your, you know, mask. And we'll need attachment points, so probably one here, here and here, of course. We'll need a lip around here to attach the filter to. We'll need to give this some thickness, and we'll need some sort of mechanism in the center of this whole thing to hold the filter in place. So let's start building the filter cover for this. Now, I referred to it as the filter earlier. Of course it's not, it's the cover for the filter. And if we have a look at how these are built for most of the models I've seen, they're just simple compression fits. I want to do mine a little differently. I don't mind a compression fit, but I want space for a rubber gasket as well, just to make it a bit safer. So I'm going to select all these faces to start with, and if you look at them, they're all a bit askew. Sorry. So I'm going to come up to the channel box first. And let's see, I'm going to select the object and I'm just going to rotate this back to straight. Just going to make the process a bit easier for us. Select all the faces around here, convert the selection to a vertex, shift right click, control right click, sorry, and to vertex and R. Now I have to apologize if you notice any jumping around in this video. I am actually not feeling very well, so I don't want to blow out headphone users with lots of coughing and whatnot. So I'm going to come out and I'm going to extrude some thickness to this mask before we do anything else. So Control E, local translate Z to 2mm. Now I've found in my own 3D printing process that 2mm is enough to give me a nice rigid plastic. Now depending on the material you use, that might vary for you, so give it a thickness however thick you want it. Now I'm going to select all the faces around here and I'm going to do an extrusion. So Control E, I'm going to extrude out 2mm. And this will allow me some space to fit a rubber gasket around there, even if it's just a few rubber bands. And then I'm going to hit Control E again and extrude out 6mm, giving me a total length of 8mm. I am then going to grab this guy and I'm going to extrude out, let's say 6mm, and that will give me the lip that the filter cover fits over. So there is one problem you're going to encounter. However, when we smooth, you'll see that it all goes way too wobbly, but we'll deal with that in a second. So we are going to select these outer faces here and we're going to duplicate them. So if you go into Edit Mesh, under Face, Duplicate, this will create a group and your object will be in there. When you do this, let me just show you that again, show you what could go wrong. Let's go to Edit Mesh again and duplicate the faces. If you grab them from here and start to move them away, oftentimes very bad things will happen. You do not want that. So I'm going to show you this one last time, how to do it without, getting errors in there. So duplicate the face, mesh, duplicate, don't touch any of this, select under the group the part you want and then move it. So you might want to center the pivot on this, modify center pivot if you don't have a shelf. Okay, now honestly we need something that will fit around the outside of this, so I'm going to go to Edge here, I'm going to go to Extrude and local translate Z, probably let's say 6mm. Actually we want an offset, so let's go 6mm under the offset and there we go. And now I'm going to select the face here and delete them, and now we have something that should more or less fit over here with a compression fit. And indeed we do. So that would be your compression fit. Now this needs some width to it, obviously, but first I want to make some holes in it. One hole for the airflow and one hole to hold the actual filter medium you'll be using, whether that's an activated charcoal filter, a cut up medical mask, a cotton ball pad. I mean, at this point, guys, we are in the situation where anything is better than nothing, and that's basically where this tutorial is coming from. So let's make a 20-sided cylinder, and we're going to use the same procedure once again. I'm going to move this into place. Now it would be better if we'd modelled all this at the origin of the grid, and indeed we can move it back there, but it's not such a complicated model that I'm going to worry about it. Now I'm going to put the scale back to 1 so we can get an exact fit, because obviously we're 3D printing, so we want to be some precision here. And then I'm going to change the radius to 25, and this will now exactly match the hole I have here. So let me get it to match the hole I have here. There we go. And we're going to use this to create a sort of filter hole in the front of this guy. So let's delete the faces we don't need. which would be all of these around here. And this is a quick tip for you. If you separate the faces like so, then I can just double click here and go boom. Now this guy is currently backwards. You can see it's black, so that's the back side of the faces. One thing I should have mentioned at the start, which I'm sure most of you know, is you want to model with two-sided lighting turned off, because if I have it turned on, now I can't tell which is back and which is front, and this is not good. So let's we can either rotate this or we can just flip the faces. So up to you really. I'm just going to grab it and go mesh display, where are we, reverse, there we are. Or you could have just rotated it. Either way is good. Now I need a couple of holes in this guy because I'm going to create a lip. So best way to achieve this, what sort of size lip do I want? This should make sense in a minute. So let's see. Yeah, I'm going to go for the edge here. Should have thought of this before, but I can do an extrusion and a local offset extrusion of 2 millimeters. And actually I want an offset. I said the right thing and then did the wrong thing, of course. So now we can come in here and go to object mode. Now I'm going to need to combine this one and this one. So mesh combine. And yep, Maya 2020 folks. Excellent. There we are. And then I'm going to select all these vertex and I want to make sure everything is perfectly level. So keep scaling until you can't scale no more, and you'll know all your verts are perfectly level. I am then going to come in and I'm going to select this edge and this edge, and I am going to just bridge those together. Now we might be a little twisty again, so let's get that right. That's good. Then I'm going to come in here and I am going to go to face mode and delete these middle faces. So that gives me a 50mm hole with a 1mm or 2mm in this case extrusion around it. Done. Okay, now I'm going to give this guy a little thickness, and let's go to face mode and Control E and local thickness 2mm. There we are. So I'm going to make this the same thickness that I would make, you know, this, but then it needs to go back 8mm as well. So Control E and local thickness 8mm. Okay, actually this needs to go back a bit further because we have to fit a filter medium in here as well. So I'm going to say that filter medium is a couple of mil thick, you know, depending on the filter medium you're using. So there we go. That's that one. Let me just move this out the way so we can get a better look at it. Now we have here. Now I'm going to be using a 50mm filter. So I'm also going to take these guys around here, Control E for extrusion, and I'm going to extrude them to a 2mm thickness. There we are. Now this here is going to be a guide to put my round filter in, and then when I shove that on there, that should go back and seal with the gasket, and if we look inside, that should leave us some room here for the filter to clamp into. Okay, so already I prefer this design to the ones I've found online. Again, your mileage may vary. The other thing we're going to need to do is we're going to need some method of making sure that when we put our, you know, activated charcoal filter or whatever we might be using in here, it just doesn't fall backwards into the mask, because, you know, that would be bad. We also need to sort out this smoothing, and it looks like there's a hard edge here. Now this won't make any difference whatsoever to your 3D printing, but it offends me because it shouldn't be there. So I'm going to go up to display, polygons, soft hard edges. You'll see there's a hard edge around here. There's one around here. So the dotted edges are soft and the solid edges are hard. So you can see where we've done some bridging, it's often gone to a hard edge. So again, this is not really going to make much of a difference to your 3D printing process. In fact, it's going to make no difference to your 3D printing process. But on your path to becoming a Maya modeler, this is not what you want. So let's just go to mesh display and not reverse, soften edge. There we go. And you'll see those edges are now soft. Okay, so we're going to go everywhere we shouldn't have a hard edge, like here, for instance. And I'm going to press G to repeat the last command, and there you go, that's soft. And it's soft down the bottom, is it? Yep. Okay, perfect. I think that's good for that one. Let's check the filter, see if we've got any extraneous hard edges here. And we're going to have to go to display, polygons, soft hard edges. There we are. Yeah, and we've got the same problem. Again, not an issue in the world if you are 3D printing, but you know, I teach Maya for a living, and I like to teach it well. So there we go, and that doesn't need to be a hard edge either. So once again, mesh display, soft edge. Jobs are good. There we are. That got rid of a few of our viewport artifacts too. So we've got an issue now where we have this thing going all mega floppy. Let's bevel it. So one around here, one around here. Now you could bevel this, or you could put in your own smoothing control edges. Putting in your own smoothing control edges is, you know, no bad thing. So that would be how you put in a smoothing control edge to hold the smoothing. So basically something will smooth from here to here and go to the midpoint, which is why it becomes a circle. It's also why this becomes a circle. You know, in Maya, if you wanted to cut a circle, normally I would use an 8-sided polygon, a hexagon. I completely forgot what that was called, but basically a cylinder with 8 sides to it. So here we go. So this, I will show you quickly, will smooth into a circle. Okay, you probably see that better if I, and this is just, you know, useful information. This will smooth into a circle. There you go. So when you're modeling, you generally want to keep your topology as light as possible. This helps you with edits, and you know, things don't get so confused. The reason we used a 20-sided one here is because we started off with a 20-sided cylinder, but in reality 8 sides is normally all you need. Okay, so let's grab this edge and this edge and this edge and this edge, because I want to keep all these edges sort of razor sharp as possible. So we're coming in here, we're getting these. What else do we need? This one and this one. Okay, that should about do it. And then we're just going to do a mesh bevel. So edit mesh, bevel. We want a really small bevel, so that's a really small bevel with 2 segments. There we go. Now when I smooth this guy, you'll see that everything stays pretty razor edged. Okay, so that's also better for our 3D printing process, and you know, for our accuracy. So now I can do the same thing here. So I'm going to select this edge, this edge, this edge, and this edge. Any other edges I need to select? Yep, indeed. This one, this one, this one. Now you could manually put smoothing control edges in here, of course. It's an option, one that I do a lot. Gives you slightly more control of the process. But in this case, we don't need it. And this is faster. Bevel. Now we want that really small fraction again. There we are, something like that with 3 segments, or 2, which will put 3 lines in. And then smooth this. And this should now work as a filter end cap. Doink. Job done. So that will fit back over here. That little lip will smash on there. So let's see, is that the correct way to do it? Okay, I think what I actually want here is for this little inner lip to actually fit into this hole. That will help us with a compression fit, but it will also so let's have a look around here, how we do it. So that's nice and compression fit. In here will go our rubber gasket to help keep us a bit safer, or in this case, basically to help us stop infecting anyone else if we happen to be sick and asymptomatic. Because if you are sick, stay at home, of course, like I am doing. Right, okay, so let's just make this a bit smaller so it helps with that compression fit. And then we will get a way to seal the filter in here. So let's do those things. Okay, so first things first, this is going to be pretty simple. All we need to do, I'm going to turn off X-ray for a second, which I have in this viewport. I'm going to unsmooth, of course. I am going to take my lasso tool and I'm just going to set this to vertex first, of course. because I'm going to select the vertex, but not like that, I'm not. So there we go, around here. Oh, for the love of Pete. Yep, don't do it like me. So here we go. There we are, and then I'm going to make this smaller by a couple of millimeters, which I'm actually just going to scale it. Now, I definitely don't want to scale it on this axis. So I'm going to hold Control and I'm going to scale it inwards until I come in to the point where I am covering that lip there. So let's have a look. Was that a success? I'm going to smooth both this and this. And no, I think that needs to be a little smaller. So which axis was it I did not want to scale? I definitely don't want to scale this one. So I'm going to go back to vertex selection. Oh, here we go again. You get me, watch me make a mistake with the lasso tool. Okay, and yeah, I think that's all of them. So let's just scale this uniformly. And I'm going to turn on X-ray here so I can see where I'm trying to scale it to. Okay, and actually I was pretty spot on. This is going to, again, depend on the tolerance of your 3D printer. You might have to do a bit of sanding and whatnot. So let's see, how would that fit? Okay, we sized this not to go inside, so let's make our filter cover a bit narrower. Again, this is not going to be too difficult. So I'm going to select all of these edges, which is now made more of a painful process by the fact that we have beveled it, of course. Okay, I think that's got them all for the outside. Convert the selection to vertex and just move it in a couple of millimeters. There we go. Now, let's see if that all goes on. So I'm just lining it up here. So that's the front. Okay, that fits on. That's going to hit our gasket. Maybe not. So let's shove it back a bit. There we go. Just like so. Let's smooth this out as well. And this out. Make sure that fits. That clear our gasket? Yeah, should do. Okay, that's probably within the tolerance of my printer. And this is pushing in here. Give us a lip to hold our filter against. Perfect. And now we need to come to the inside and let's see what's the best way to do this. I'm going to isolate this in the viewport to get rid of that. Can I multi-cut around here? I should be able to. Yeah, but it's all going to go askew, is it not? So best way. Okay, best way to do this is to cheat. Let's get a 20-sided cylinder in here and let's turn both of these things to object mode. Let's just oh yeah, the filter cover is hidden at the moment. That's fine. Let's bung in a cylinder and let's move it down and get it arranged here. J. And we know the diameter of this will be 26 millimeters. That will give us 52 millimeter in diameter. So there'll be method to my madness in a second, folks. In fact, let's make it 25. That should be exactly the same size as the hole we've got here. We can use the fore-view here, the front view, to line that up to here. So it's kind of perfect. There we go. Let me turn off X-ray. Okay, so that hole should be 50 and this one should be 50. Let's see. Yeah, and yeah. Turn on X-ray a minute. Okay, this looks bigger, but that shouldn't be, should it? Whoops, what am I moving here? Yeah, that is. Okay, so just want to make sure that that's perfectly lined up. There we go. I was looking at the wrong edge. Happens. Yeah, about perfect. Okay, so I'm going to use this now and I'm going to take these faces and I'm going to extrude out and I'm going to do an offset of 2 millimeters. There we go. And No, actually I don't want the offset, do I? I want the local translate, of course. 2 millimeters, there we go, and then I can cut away all of these faces. Okay, and the same here. This is not the most efficient way to do this. But hey, it works. And I'm going to select these edges around here and these edges around here, and I'm going to bridge. Like so. Now we're all twisty, which we definitely don't want to be. There we go. Done. And this will create a lip on the inside of our guy here. So I'm going to oversize this just a tad. Right, and that will allow us to guide the filter in place from the inside. Now you'll notice that I am just bisecting my model. When it comes to 3D printing, this bisection will print as one lump, so that would be absolutely fine. Now we do need to get a bit better topology on this guy, so I'm going to isolate the viewport, or not topology, we need some smoothing control edges, which in turn will create the topology, I guess. So edit mesh and bevel and small fraction. There we are, with 3 segments. We'll make sure that this thing remains a perfect circle with hard edges. Now you want to make sure that it is bisected in there. So let's just make sure, shove it in there, so my slicer sees that as one object, like so. And now we need to create something to stop the filter falling out. So let's grab both of these things and go Control and 1. And what we really need is some sort of mesh that we'll be able to breathe through, but will allow, you know, the filter not to just fall out backwards into the mask. So let's isolate just this guy. And I'm going to bring in a poly cube. Yeah, I really should have kept this thing at the origin of the grid. Okay, and let's stick that polycube in there. Now we want this to be perfectly perpendicular with this, and we want it to be in the middle of the circle. So let's isolate these 2 things in this viewport too. Okay, so I'm going to come in and I want to make sure that the top of this is bisected. Selected both. The top of this is bisected completely into that. So again, our slicer sees it as one object, and now I need the center point of my circle. So I'm going to grab the vertex and I'm going to move this up to the center point, which is here, I can see. And of course, we're on the center this way. And now I'm going to change the location, the pivot point of this, because I'm going to duplicate it around in a circle. So a line there, there we go, done. And now I can duplicate special. So let's come in, insert, by the way, to align your pivot point. And we're going to go to edit, duplicate special options box. I will just reset my tool. Now, number of copies, I think 5 will probably do, and we're going to rotate, what are we going to rotate in Z? 60 degrees. So duplicate special, there we go. So that would be enough to stop the filter dropping through the other side. Now, let's see here, do we want more than that? I don't actually think we need more than that. Because we'll put some circles around it too. So let's take this guy. Do we want to use a circle this big? Yeah, let's hit Control. We want to duplicate this guy special as well, because I want to be able to change its radius. So Edit, Duplicate Special. We of course don't want to use our last settings, so let's reset the tool. And let's come in and just put Duplicate Input Graph. Duplicate. That way I will still have the input graph, so I can come in and poly, where are my inputs? Poly cylinder, there we are. And I can change the radius. So I want to do one like here. That might be a bit thick for me though. Yeah, so I'm going to make it a bit narrower to match these guys. change the radius a bit more, and duplicate special with the same settings. Says Control-Shift-D, or at least it would be Control-Shift-D if for some reason my recording software did not see that as a hotkey. So I'm going to have to go to Edit, Duplicate Special again, just with the same settings, and then I can come in and change the radius of this one. So there we are. That should keep our cover nice and stiff. Now there is one more thing we can do. We can make sure that this is all in perfect alignment. So let's grab it all like so, hit 1 and make sure that all of these things are flat, because if they're not, then of course our slicer will see them as not flat, but this looks pretty good. So all of this will need to be smoothed. Let's see. So that's the lip that goes around the outside. So one thing we would need to do is take all these guys, duplicate them, just duplicate, and then I want the filter to click fit into here. So I need to cut some holes in this cylinder, and that's going to be a pain. So I'm going to show you another way to do this with a Boolean operation. So let's just select what we want here. And I'm going to show you like the quick and dirty way to do this, if you like, which I wouldn't recommend for actual modeling in Maya if you're working for the film industry, the game industry or whatever. But for 3D printing technique, this works particularly well. So what we need is to smooth this. We need to be working with this as smooth geometry. So mesh smooth. There we go. I'm going to give it a couple of divisions because why not? And then I'm going to take all of these sticks. I'm going to combine them, mesh combine. There we go. I'm going to move them into position so they completely bisect our job here. And in fact, I'm going to make them a bit wider for this. So we have complete bisection of this. I'm going to select the circle. I'm going to select this. I'm going to get a selection order is important. Select the thing you want to be cut first, and then select the thing you're cutting with. Get a mesh Boolean difference, and that will cut those holes in it for us. Okay, now that's going to be a very tight fit depending on the tolerances of your printer, but I kind of want a very tight fit. What we could do, let's take the isolate off. What we could do before we do any of that, so let's just move this. Okay, has this gone back to separate objects? No, good. Let's get that back to separate objects. So I'm just kind of, there we go. Okay, excuse me. I had another idea. So I would want to scale these out a fraction, maybe like so, just because the tolerances on my 3D printer are not very good. So your mileage, again, I think I've said that way too many times in this tutorial, may vary. But for me, I'm going to get them just a little bit wider. Now I can combine them. Okay, select this ring and just do the same thing again. So we're going to make them a bit wider just to help us with the Boolean operation. We're going to push them in there until they are a nice fit like so. Yeah, that should do us. And then I'm going to select this one, mesh, Booleans, difference. Okay, and that's cut the holes in there for us. So if we go back to having everything the same here, when we take our filter here, which I am going to go backwards with, that should slot into, what happened there? I missed one. That should slot into here from the inside, like so, clip. So basically you'll be able to put your filter in here, as long as it's not thicker than this, which is about 1 centimeter at the moment. The filter will hit this lip here to be held in place, and then you will clip this in place to stop it falling backwards, inwards into the mask. So now we need to make a similar sort of cover for the front, but I actually want to make one that has some sort of splash guard on it, just to help basically. So the reason we have to clip this in place, by the way, is because if we printed it this way, 3D printers would be printing into open air, which is not a good thing. And I'm going to get all of this lot and group it together just to keep us a bit organized here so we know what's what. So group that. Call it inner filter cover. There we go. So that should do that. We're pretty much a lot of the way there now. If you have thicker filters, of course, you can just make this thicker and then cut it. And then you can design this thing to take any filter size that you deem appropriate. Let's make the cover for the front of here. Okay, so the way I want to make this cover is I'm going to spin this 90 degrees because it will make more sense. Okay, that's 90. Yeah, I can see it up there. So let's isolate it in the viewport. Now, the way to make this cover. Well, first things first, I am going to make sure that this is flat on the ground. That view is still isolated. Or at least flat to one of these grid unit points. Now I'm going to unsmooth it so I can get a better look, and there we go. This will be important in a second. Now I'm going to take some poly square and move that up here. Get it into position. So I'm going to use the side view here. Where is it? Here it is. I'm going to make sure it's up here on the floor, and I'm probably going to make it 2 millimeters high. That might be a bit much. 1.5 maybe. There we go. Again, depending on the tolerance of your printer. Then I'm going to take the vertex from the top and I'm going to shove it this way. Just about like so. This is going to help me make a splash guard and also direct breath somewhat downwards. So let's move that into position on the view here, and let's get it into the center of this thing. So top view would be useful for that, of course. Let's isolate it. Okay, this grid is just getting on my nerves. And then I am going to make this like so. I just want to bisect it basically. Okay, so that's in there. They appear to be on a level. And then I'm just going to duplicate it a few times. Now I'm kind of doing this by eye. You can, of course, take your time, do a better job than I'm doing. Okay, so basically copy all this lot. Control D and shove it down there until it's in approximately the position you need it to be. Okay. So that will act as a splash guard for the front of your filter. Now let's group all this lot. Control G so I can just spin it back. I'm going to center the pivot of the group. So center pivot here, and then I am going to rotate this. Whoops, I am definitely not going to extrude it. Let me undo that. There we go. And then I'm going to rotate the group 90. So just E to rotate, hold J to lock the rotation, and flip it up 90. Okay, and we are almost about done. So we've got a fairly complicated mask here. My outliner looks like a disaster. Do not do this. Name things, keep everything neat. I am going to grab everything in the scene right now and delete the history of it. So edit, delete by type. Where are we? Okay, I was in the wrong menu. That's why. Bit of a conniption. All right, outline is looking a tiny bit neater. So that filter will fit on there, or filter cover. I must stop calling it a filter because, of course, it is not. And our filter medium will fit between here and here, so we won't have any trouble with it falling into the mask. And this guy acts as a combination splash guard and cover, so you're not walking around with a bit of cotton wool hanging out the front of your face. So I will be back in a moment. I'll just pause this video because I'm going to get this thing ready to slice, and then I'm going to open it in a slicer, a 3D print slicer, so you can have a look at it. So I'll be back in just a second. Actually, thinking about it, I may as well take you guys along on the particular journey of laying this out for a slicer. So you see the first thing that went wrong there is I didn't select the group. Now, another thing that I might decide to do is to edit the vertex on these guys so they're not poking through the plastic too much. Now, this is a bit of a luxury item because it doesn't technically need to be done, but I'm going to do it anyway. Okay, that just looks a little neater to me. Right, now, before we put this into a slicer, we'd need to combine it. But if we combine it at the moment, that would smooth all of the parts, and this would happen. So that's no good. Now, I recommend you save your file at this point, because if you need to come back and make any changes, you do not want to be working on smooth geometry. There'll just be too much topology. It will be a mess. So I'm going to select this guy. I'm going to get a mesh, smooth. Okay, and I give that as many divisions as I think is necessary. So 2 is normally a good indicator. It should print fine on that. Now I'm going to select all of the components with the smooth geometry here. And let me just check something here. Yeah, this one can go down a little bit, not quite central. Again, I did it by eyeball, so yeah. And let's select all these components. Now you really want to make sure that these things are level, otherwise you're going to have problems printing. So I'm going to come into the first view here, and I'm going to pull these, not you, I'm going to pull these forward just a tad. Okay, so they are pretty level, I should think. The slicer will see that as one object. So let's grab them both. Now this has been smoothed, and do a mesh, combine. There you are, done. Now this will print. So now we need to do the same with this. This is all combined, but it needs smoothing. So mesh, smooth. Do the same level of smoothing that you did on your other objects. Otherwise, you might be in for a bit of a shock. And this thing. So this needs to be smooth. This needs to be smooth. This needs to be smooth. And this needs to be smooth. And these straight bars do not. So mesh, smooth. We can do them all together. And 2 divisions. Okay, there we go. All right, so actually, I think that top one was already smoothed, wasn't it? Yeah, it was. So actually, that is part of this inner lip here. So let's go to Mesh Combine, and there we are. That's one object now, so that's ready for printing. Okay, and it's got those little notches in it. Problem. Let's isolate this a second. Yeah, this was already smooth because we smoothed it before we cut the notches in it. So this just needs to be combined. Yeah, my mistake there. Got a bit carried away. So mesh combine. And that should combine into one object. And now it's ready to be printed. Okay, and now we need to do this. So let's work on it, shall we? So these will need to be smoothed, mesh, smooth, and there we go. 2 divisions should be fine. And now we can combine this together also, making sure that it's all on the same level. Yup, mesh, combine. Okay, so that should fit into the notches here, making sure our filter does not fall backwards onto our head. Okay, now there might be a better attachment method than that. I haven't actually tested this attachment method. Maybe you'd need to make the bars a bit wider at the end to get a better snap fit. There shouldn't be any pressure on it really, so it should be okay. You might need to use more bars. Now, one thing I realized as I'm going through this with you, we got 3 bits to 3D print, but some of you are probably shouting at the screen right now because there's actually no way to attach this thing to our head, which is kind of important when it comes to this type of thing. So let's create an attachment method. Now, luckily enough, the attachment method is always separate and intersected with the outside of the mask, so it doesn't really matter that much that we've left it until this point. It just would have been rather ironic, really, if I'd have signed the tutorial off here and left you guys hanging with no way to actually attach it to your head. All right, so let's get that done. I'm going to bring back the grid so we can see it. I'm going to move all of these things to the origin of the grid. So I actually have a script for this. I actually have a tutorial for how to do it as well. If you do not, or you don't want to watch that, it's quite simple. You would just move the thing, hit X, and then snap it to the grid until you snapped it to the origin. I don't want to bother with that, so I'm just going to use the script. All right, so all of these things should be snapped to the origin of the grid and snapped to the origin of the grid. Okay, they are. All right, so what do we need? We need an attachment point. Now let's come up with something that would make sense. So, okay, sorry about that video jump there. You know, as I mentioned previously, I'm not at my best at the moment. So let's do these attachment points so we can attach this thing to our head. Now we can actually grow the attachment points out of the model itself. So I looked at a few pictures of where these points are on more commercial products, and I'm going to grow my attachment point, the first one, out of these faces here. Then I'm going to cut the model in half and mirror it, of course. So I'm going to hit Control E and I go for a local translate of 1 centimeter, so 10 millimeters. Then I don't want this big Mr. Blobby standing up. Don't like it. So I'm going to select the edge here and I'm going to hit Shift and use the slide edge tool. Middle mouse drag that down to the bottom so we get a more contoured look. Then I'm going to select this edge and I'm going to hit G to repeat the slide and edge tool, and I'm going to do this one too. And probably this one up here. Just going to look a little bit nicer than a solid block, but you want this quite solid because, you know, it's going to hold the thing to your head, and if it snaps, well, that would be bad. So let's put another one down here. So which line were we on this one? So let's do the same thing down here. So face 1, 2, 3, and where would we want that? Probably here. So Control E and do the same thing, local translate of 1 centimeter, and we'll just use the slide on edge tool once again to make it a bit funkier. Now this will probably require a support when you 3D print it, but needs must, can't always be a no support model as much as we might like it. Now, oh, like that's fanned out a bit, does it matter? No, it doesn't. So slide edge tool, there we go, and just do the same thing. So down here, and down here. Oh, I have both of them selected. And that is not going the way I want it to go there. Now it is. Okay, so that looks pretty good to me. Now they would need to be have some holes cut in them. I mean, you need to get a piece of string or elastic or whatever you're using through. So let's boolean the holes. I am still on the soft, not the soft selection. I am still on the slide edges tool. So this is a bit janky, but it should work. Let's come up here. Let's make this thing a bit bigger. There we go. Let's squeeze it down a bit and let's rotate it into approximately the place we need it to cut a hole. So hopefully you see where I'm going with this. I'm going to put it that way a bit, and why is my movement tool set on world object? There we are. That's a bit easier. Okay, so I'm going to see where I need the hole here, And I'm going to try and do my best to like what Maya 2012. I swear it's got some errors, folks. Not 2012, 2020. What century am I living in? The wrong one, apparently. Okay, so let's just get that like that, and I want it to cut upwards a bit. As I say, this is a bit janky, but it would seem like a reasonable enough method. Now, you don't want to make it too big, the hole you cut, because you need to leave, you know, plenty of plastic to actually hold it on, which I am going to do. Now, of course, from the bottom, it will be attached to the mask, so we don't need to leave a particularly big lip down here, but we do need to leave a bit on the sides and enough room to allow us to put our elastic string or whatever we are using through it. So that should be, whoops, that should be pretty good. I want to give it a bit of an upward lift. And yeah, that's probably too fat, isn't it? So like that should do. Oi, this is awkward. Okay, there we go. Okay, I think I'm making adjustments for the sake of making adjustments now. I'm going to select both of these things, the one I want to cut first and then the device I want to cut with, and I'm going to go to Mesh Boolean Difference. And that's going to take a while, and there you go, I've got a nice hole cut through this thing now. And I'm going to say that's probably definitely going to need some sort of support when we 3D print it. Actually, before I do that Boolean operation, I am going to duplicate this cube so I can use it down here. Okay, so just got to back up so the holes will be the same size. So again, the thing you want to cut, the thing you're doing the cutting with, make sure we've got plenty of plastic around all sides, mesh, booleans, difference. And there we go. Now I'm going to fight this one into place, and I'll be back in a second because you guys don't need to watch that again. So just a second. Okay, I have some nice big large attachment points on my model. Now I can chop it in half, and we can just mirror it across, so we don't have to do that twice. Let me just find out what's going on in my view here. Don't want the X-ray, don't want the grid. So faces, and come in, cut it in half. There we go. Before I cut it in half, honestly, I'm going to delete the history of it. So edit, delete by type, history. Let's isolate it so we can see what we're dealing with. Face mode, cut it in half, and there we are. Delete, and that should be halved. Let's just double check that. And there should be no faces along this inner lip. There is not. So now we should just be a very simple job of mirroring it. So mesh mirror. There we go. And we mirrored positive X with a massive merge border again. 0.1 should be absolutely fine. There we are, done. And done. No holes in it, no janky hard edges on it, and attachment points on both sides. Now, it may be that you want to put these attachment points you know, somewhere a little more comfortable. This could interfere with your eyesight or whatnot. Not actually sure. Might be looking at it. Should have probably put these a bit lower down. I guess time will tell on that one. Now, for the actual print in itself, all I'm going to do is also, these guys are probably a bit skinny. What I would probably do is multi-cut across here and then select all the faces here. Let's just isolate this. So I would multi-cut here, select this face and this face, hit extrude, Control E, and do a local translate of 1. That would make these attachment points 2 millimeters thick. Okay, let's do that. Why not? Okay, so I'm going to come in and multi-cut. So the best way to do this actually is to mesh, separate. Here we are. Let's grab all of these guys. Not going to need them. oh, obviously we're going to need the one we just did. Okay, and we're going to duplicate this special all the way around again. So let's make sure the pivot point is in the right place. It probably won't be. No, let's center the pivot. So modify center pivot, and then I'm going to move the pivot to the bottom face here. And now we can duplicate it special all the way around. So edit, duplicate special, and we want to do a 60 degrees in this way, and we want 5 copies. 5, there we go, and duplicate special. Done. Now all we need to do is recut the holes in the front portion so they are actually much larger. So yeah, as you can see, these holes are no longer the correct size. So it would actually be better if we redid this inner lip here. So I'm going to mesh separate. Done. And it would be better if we redid this. For the sake of time and expedience, I'm not going to. I'm just going to go to mesh boolean difference. And yeah, that didn't work at all, did it? Why not? Okay, because these are not thick enough. That's why. So let's select them all. Let's duplicate them because we want a set that are going to stay in place and a set that are just for booleans. So we're going to make them a bit thicker, like so, and then we're going to do it. So same thing, mesh, boolean, difference. Okay, what has happened here? Let me just select this object. Okay, that's not having it, is it? Like I said, we would have been better off redoing it. Let me just isolate these two things here so I can see what's going on. So let's make this bigger too. Okay, I would need to come in and remove these faces. I think, yeah, that's not happy because of the boolean that's already there. All right, let's go to plan 2 here and make another ring. Now, this shouldn't be that difficult. In fact, it should be rather easy. Let's just delete this ring and make another one. So, what do we want? We want a cylinder with a 25 centimeter diameter. 25 centimeter radius, sorry, for a 50 millimeter diameter. We want to flip this up. Now, we want to make it actually, let's do an extrusion. So face here and here. Let's extrude this out too. So local translate 2 millimeters. And that gives us this to cut out these faces. Oh yeah, I kind of forgot about that, but there is actually a few different ways of doing this, some of which are a bit easier than this way that I was going to show you, but now we're stuck with this way. Not too much of a pain. Okay. And let's just select these edges and bridge across. So we want to bridge. Okay, and we're all twisty. We do not want to be all twisty. There we are. Done. And we need to bevel these edges to make sure they remain sharp when we smooth. Okay, I think I got them all. So mesh bevel. Where are we? Edit mesh bevel, of course. Small fraction. There you go. One segment, done. And when we smooth, it stays sharp. So now we can do a mesh smooth with a divisions of 2. There we are. Okay, now we should be able to try our boolean. So now, that's a good point, isn't it? Which one of these were thicker? That was thicker, that was thicker, that was thicker, that was thicker. And that was thicker. And let's select this and Control 1. And there you go. That's what we need to boolean right now. So, I see what the problem was. We're sticking right through the other side. The problem is I am a bit of an idiot. Alright, well, we don't need to be sticking all the way through the other side, so let's do this. And one at a time. Actually, we can probably do them all at once. This sometimes has unforeseen consequences, but I'm going to give it a go. Mesh, booleans, difference. And yep, seem pretty good. Okay, am I happy with that? Yes, I am quite happy with that. All right, so let's get this thing back into place on the front of this model here. Make sure it bisects, and now we have bigger connection points to push in and hopefully give us a better compression fitting. So we need to recombine all of this lot. Mesh combine. Okay, and done. Now all that remains is for us to throw this thing to a slicer. So you're going to need to do a... oh, whoopsies. Whoopsie daisies. This ring and this should also be combined. Okay, now I'm going to delete the history of everything. So edit, delete by type, history. There we go, and I can now call these what they are. Front filter cover. What's this guy? Inner filter cover and mask. So they're all done. Now all we need to do is export them to an STL file and throw them in a slicer. So let's try it. Now you're going to need to go to Windows, Settings, Preferences, and make sure that you have, nope, you're going to need to go to Window, let's see, Settings, Preferences, Plugin Manager, and make sure you have STL Export ticked and on, which should be here somewhere. STL Translator. Make sure you have it loaded. So you want to just go to File, Export Selection, and export it as an STL. So I'm going to do that, and I will see you in the slicer. Okay, so here we are in my slicer of choice, which is Cura at the moment, and if I go on to the prepared statement so we can look at the layers here, you'll see that this is indeed flat on the floor and it prints up without any problems. Now I'd probably suggest some supports for these pieces here for the holders, although that's entirely up to you, of course. You shouldn't need that much support because of the way it's overhung. But again, that will depend on your specific 3D printer and your particular criteria for what you need. So anyway, I hope you never actually need to use one of these things, you know, and I hope you can get the proper protective equipment you need if you need it, of course. Other than that, I hope this has been an interesting modeling exercise for you. Thanks for watching.